bring this back a minute, Alex, because I'm interested in what you just said about how you just don't believe that it can't be taught that a punch can be can draw heat. Now, I'm wondering whether we are now in a situation, and maybe you'll know this as a trainer, where a lot of guys aren't being taught the fundamentals properly. They're not being taught how to sell, for example. Like if you're in a rear chin lock for a couple or a minute or so, you don't just get up and do the next spot. And if there's people, you should be able to sell the effects of that. And if people aren't able to do that, if people don't have that psychology drilled into them when they're learning, then naturally we're going to have an industry where people only use high spots because they don't have the psychology to do anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you came to me on this, because I'll tell you the part I've played in that, and also how I think it can be changed. The reason I want to be involved in the change of it is because I feel massively responsible, like I said, to bringing the smart wrestling on a regular basis to the UK, but also setting up my school. Now, when I set up my school in 2001, I've been wrestling for 5 years, so I felt that I was pretty qualified as a guy to come in and do that, right? But back then, when I did Talk Sports Show, I used to have to watch Raw every week, then Raw and SmackDown and Nitro, and that's a lot of wrestling to watch, right? So I used to fast forward to get to the good bits. During a match, basically, if a match was had a lot of, like you said, a chin lock or whatever, I got to watch 6 hours of wrestling a week sometimes. I'm going to fast forward to the good bits. Yeah. And that's actually how my wrestling was. I look back, when we did Revival, which ironically, Revival out of 9 matches had 5 ref bumps. So then when we did Uprising, it was like, right, only 1 ref bump on the show. Yeah. Then out of like 8 matches, I think we had 5 standoffs. You just couldn't, that was the new in thing. But what happened at that point was I realised that I was teaching. I hadn't been taught that stuff. So I was quite responsible for training. Luckily, some really good guys, Ross Jordan, Sticks, Hay Vance and Duke of Danger, like all these people came from that school. So some good people came from there, but I think that the problem is that to change it, I want to answer your question in 2 bits, right? The problem that we have, first of all, is that I believe that where wrestling went wrong with me was that the people who could have taught me looked down on me, and all of us, and it was like, well, you're rubbish. You don't deserve to be on the show. What do they know? And what you got to understand is when a kid goes to a wrestling school, and he pays his money, it's not his fault if he gets put on a show and then thinks he's a wrestler. It's not his fault if he has no understanding of psychology, and it's the industry itself not policing and controlling itself and not helping that. Because what happens is even the people running the school are victims of a system that's been left out of control, right? That's the problem. It's no one's fault. It's evolution. That's the first way to deal with it. Because it's easy to come in and say, you're rubbish, you're rubbish, you're rubbish, boom. Well, that's not how it is. And actually, without those people who are rubbish in some people's eyes, like there's people that have gone on, that I was rubbish at that point, but I went on to train people who went on to train people who are good. So it's a necessary part of the cycle. So the issue is, how do you get these people to come together and actually listen to your opinion? And I'll sort of expose an FWA secret here, but what stands out on your mind as, like, when you go to a rock concert, I say this, and this is where the Showstealer sort of comes from. When you go to a rock concert, there are 3 to 5 things that you remember from that concert that were good bits, same as a show. There were 3 to 5 things I think you remember, like, that was good, oh, do you remember that bit? So my job is to be one of those bits. So I teach that in my seminars. And out of New Frontiers, I would say one of the main things that came from it was Spud's entrance. Okay, a lot of effort was put into that, even more on the next show. Even if to the point, this is so how subliminal it is, because the first time people were going to see that, we wanted to make it special. If you watch the highlight video again, you'll notice that the shot before it is Simmons blowing off Tony Scarlow's handshake, which goes to black and white, so it's as grainy as it can get, so that Spud comes up in full colour next, right? Now, the incentive behind that, what would you think the message would be, that why we went to that much trouble? Because every student in this country and every wrestler deep down wants to have a rock star wrestling entrance, right? So you need to get a reason for them to want to listen to your version of wrestling, right? So now instantly, if you look at the next show, we've got 15 people, some of the best unsigned talent in the country, all want to be involved because everybody wants to have that rock star entrance. So what I said to Tony Simpson, if we put that effort and energy into this, then people will listen to the bigger picture, like the principles. I know a lot of people see it as a joke, but there's a reason behind that. So I think that what you're saying is completely correct. There is a problem there. But if people have faith in the product, the end goal, which is what we're trying to do, they will listen to it. And I think what's happened is now, because we've got 9 different wrestling schools sending coach trips now to the next show. and then from there the syllabus, and it is happening, but it's giving people a reason to want to evolve for the better and not just say you're rubbish, you don't know wrestling, because that's not anyone's fault. You know, if you get put on a show, you're as much a part of the wrestling business by default, if anything, but you are much part of the wrestling business as somebody in the main event of an FWA All-Star show. It just depends what training you come from. So I think it can be changed, but the schools is the fundamental issue there.
I mean, Alex and Phil, you both said about how you think it's not a case of high spots, it is a case of heat, and how it can be generated, and we could go back to I guess an older way of doing things, if that's the right way to phrase it. But Chris, I'm interested. I haven't heard what you think on this, and I wonder whether frankly they're right. I mean, do you think now we've gone through a phase where fans are conditioned to see TLC matches? Let me give you an example. In fact, right now tomorrow we're both working on an IPW show, the main event of which is a TLC match. Yeah. Now, I know for a fact that there's a fan from America who's coming over doing a 7,000-mile round trip just to see a TLC match. Yeah. And frankly, he's a guy who grew up, as many people in their early 20s did, watching ECW, watching whatever. If it was a 60-minute Iron Man match, it was going to be a technical clinic. Yeah. I just don't see that he would be on that aeroplane. Is there a danger that the more traditional style of wrestling matches just can't attract fans anymore?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's about the style of wrestling, whether it be a technical classic or a TLC match. It's about the connection between the wrestlers and the fans. This guy, this American, has obviously felt a connection to the Thrillers and the Leaders, that match, that he wants to see them again. He may have come to see them again if it was just a regular match. The TLC thing is just, icing on the cake. But I think it just proves that you can still connect with, intelligent, smart wrestling fans to the point that this guy wants to travel all that way to see a show. If you can do it with him, you can do it with anyone. And I don't think the TLC, it's a gimmick that's going to attract him, but it's more about the connection. Because you could put any 4 guys in that match, and he would think, well, nah. But it's 4 guys that he likes, he knows. For some reason, like the night of the show, there was a massive pop when they won those belts. And that guy was obviously part of that pop, and felt that reaction so deeply that he wants to come and spend money to buy a ticket to see the show. So if you can get that smart fan, you can get anyone.